The moment Zane stepped off the shuttle, the alien world hit him with all its foreign intensity. The air was thick with a strange mix of burning spices and metal. The ground beneath his boots hummed, as if the very planet was alive, buzzing with energy. This was his first time on Zyxar 7, the planet of the Zyx, an ancient race of aliens. They had a reputation for being as old as the stars, wise and proud, and deadly when provoked. But Zane wasn't here to provoke. He was here to negotiate a peace treaty. And to be honest, he wasn't quite sure what to expect. The marketplace was crowded, filled with towering figures, multi-eyed creatures and beings whose shapes defied anything Zane had seen before. He'd been trained for diplomacy, of course, but nothing had prepared him for the sheer strangeness of it all. He had to admit, it was kind of exciting. He grinned as he made his way through the bustling streets, his boots clacking on the hard ground. Not bad for an alien world, he muttered to himself, looking up at the vibrant sky where two suns hung like twin jewels. But then his eyes landed on her. Standing by the entrance of the council hall was a figure so imposing, so striking, that everything else seemed to fade into the background. She was taller than most of the Zyx, her muscular frame covered in sleek armor that shimmered with a strange, metallic blue glow. Her golden eyes glowed beneath the shadow of her helmet, sharp and calculating. Yet, something about the way she carried herself made Zane's pulse quicken. She wasn't just any guard, she was the guard. Arixith, the most formidable of all Zyx warriors. He'd heard the stories. Some said she could take down a dozen soldiers with a single strike. Others whispered that she had never lost a battle. To Zane, though, she seemed more than just a warrior. There was something else there, something wild, untamed, that drew him in. He couldn't help himself. He had to smile. It was just a small smile, but it was enough. A playful gesture, a way to break the tension that hung in the air. And to his surprise, Arixith's eyes flickered with something that wasn't disdain, something like curiosity. "You human," she said in a deep, rumbling voice, "you dare smile at me?" Zane raised an eyebrow, feeling the heat of her gaze. "What, is smiling illegal around here? I thought it was a universal sign of friendliness." He flashed her a grin, showing no fear, though he couldn't deny that his heart was beating faster now. Her stance didn't change. She stood like a stone statue, unmoving, unyielding. Her expression remained unreadable. "Friendliness is not something I understand," Arixith replied, her voice colder than before. "To smile is to show weakness. I do not show weakness." Zane chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. "Well, maybe you should give it a try. You might like it. Trust me, showing teeth doesn't always mean you're about to fight." Arixith's eyes narrowed. She looked him over, clearly confused by his nonchalance. "You think I should smile to show weakness?" "Not at all," Zane said, shaking his head. "I think you should smile because it might be the most dangerous thing you can do, and I'm betting you don't back down from a challenge." For a brief moment there was silence between them, and Zane could have sworn there was a flicker of something in her eyes, something almost human. But before he could decipher it, Arixith straightened, her posture more rigid than before. "You will find," she said slowly, her tone deep and serious, "that I do not accept challenges lightly." Zane's grin never faltered. "Oh, don't worry, I'm not challenging you yet, but if I do, I'll make sure it's a fair fight." And with that, he turned and walked toward the council hall, leaving Arixith standing there, her golden eyes following him, her expression still unreadable. For the next few days, Zane couldn't get Arixith out of his mind. Every time he passed her, whether it was in the marketplace near the council hall or walking through the bustling corridors of the Zyx capital, she was there, watching him, observing him. She didn't approach him, but he could feel her eyes on him, sharp and assessing. It was like a game, one he wasn't quite sure he understood yet, but one he was determined to win. And then, on the fourth day, he found himself standing outside the council hall once again. He hadn't meant to seek her out, but somehow, his feet had led him here. He was there on official business, of course, preparing for the next round of peace talks, but a part of him wanted to see if she would appear again. He was waiting for a response from the Zyke's council when, out of the corner of his eye, he saw her. Erixith. She was standing in her usual spot, her arms crossed in front of her chest, her golden eyes scanning the crowd. The moment she saw him, she tilted her head, as if waiting to see what he would do next. Zane took a deep breath and, without thinking, grinned at her again. It was playful, teasing, but something told him this time would be different. To his surprise, Erixith didn't look away. Her lips twitched slightly. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there, a sign of something, maybe even a challenge of her own. "You smile again," she said, her voice softer than before, though still laced with suspicion. "I told you," Zane said, stepping a little closer, "smiling is the best way to win. You should try it sometime. I promise, it doesn't always mean you're about to attack." Erixith's golden eyes locked onto his, searching him in a way that sent a shiver down his spine. "You are strange, human, but I suppose that is what makes you interesting." Zane's heart skipped a beat at her words. There was something in her voice now, something warm, something real. "You think I'm interesting?" he asked, his voice lighter, teasing again. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she tilted her head, as if contemplating the meaning of his question. "You are different from the others," she finally said, her gaze lingering on him longer than usual. "And maybe that is why I find you more challenging than I expected." Zane smiled wider. "Well, I'm always up for a challenge." Erixith didn't say anything, but her gaze softened just a bit. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was enough to make Zane feel like maybe, just maybe, he was starting to break through that stone wall of hers. And as they stood there, caught in a quiet moment between them, Zane realized that he had already won something more than just a smile. He had earned her attention, and that, he decided, was just the beginning. The next few days passed in a blur of diplomatic meetings and formalities, but Zane couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between him and Erixith. Every time he passed her, whether it was near the council hall or in the marketplace, he felt the heat of her gaze. It was a strange mix of intensity and curiosity, and it both unnerved and excited him. Erixith wasn't just a warrior. She was a riddle wrapped in armor, and Zane was more than a little determined to figure her out. One afternoon, after a long day of negotiations, Zane found himself wandering the quiet corridors of the Zyke's capital. His mind wasn't on the treaty anymore. It was on her. He hadn't meant to come this way, but before he knew it, he was standing outside the same training arena where he had first seen Erixith in action. The sounds of battle echoed from inside, grunts, clashes, the unmistakable hum of energy shields flickering to life. Curiosity tugged at him, and without thinking, he stepped inside. The sight before him made his heart race. Erixith was in the center of the arena, her blue armor gleaming under the harsh lights. She was facing off against two Zyke's guards, her movements fluid and powerful. Every strike, every block was a thing of precision. Her muscles flexed under the strain of combat, her golden eyes flashing with focus. Zane leaned against the wall, unable to tear his eyes away. The way she fought was breathtaking, like a dance of strength and grace. There was no hesitation in her movements, no sign of doubt. She was a predator in her element, and Zane was captivated. Without thinking, he called out to her, "Hey, Erixith, mind if I join in?" She froze mid-strike, her golden eyes narrowing as they locked onto him. The two guards hesitated, unsure of what was happening. "What did you say, human?" Erixith's voice was low, almost dangerous. Zane grinned, pushing himself off the wall and walking toward her. "I said, mind if I join in? You know, get in a little practice myself." His tone was casual, but there was a glint of challenge in his eyes. Erixith stood still for a moment, her chest rising and falling with the effort of her fight. The silence between them stretched, thick with tension. The other guards looked from Erixith to Zane, clearly waiting for her response. "You wish to fight me?" Erixith asked, her voice colder now. Zane shrugged. "Sure, Why not? I could use the workout. And hey, it's not every day I get invited to spar with the deadliest warrior in the galaxy. The guards shifted uneasily, exchanging uncertain glances, but Arixith just looked at Zane, her gaze unwavering. Then she stepped forward, her expression hardening. "Very well," she said, her voice a growl. "But do not think that I will go easy on you, human." Zane's grin only widened. Wouldn't dream of it. In an instant, Arixith closed the distance between them, moving faster than Zane expected. Her fist came at him with the force of a thunderstorm, and he barely managed to dodge it, stumbling back. He hadn't anticipated how quick she was. But he wasn't a soldier for nothing. He recovered quickly, his feet moving with practiced precision as he ducked and weaved around her strikes. She was strong, no question about that, but Zane had something she didn't: unpredictability. He darted around her, landing quick jabs that she expertly blocked, but the look in her eyes showed that she was starting to enjoy the challenge. "You're quick," Arixith said, her voice tinged with surprise. "Thanks, I try." Zane's grin didn't fade as he launched another series of rapid strikes. But then, just as he thought he might actually have the upper hand, Arixith's hand shot out, grabbing him by the wrist and yanking him toward her. He was caught off guard, and before he could react, she flipped him over her shoulder and onto the ground with a solid thud. Zane groaned, the wind knocked out of him. "Oof, okay, that was impressive," he said, trying to catch his breath. Arixith stood over him, her golden eyes blazing with amusement. "You underestimated me, human." Zane laughed, rolling to his feet. "I'll admit that one was all you, but I'm not done yet." "You are persistent," Arixith said, her voice softer now, though there was still that gleam of challenge in her eyes. "But this is not a game. You cannot win by simply being quick. You must be strong, focused." Zane wiped the dirt off his uniform, still smiling. "I never said I was trying to win, just trying to keep up." Arixith tilted her head, clearly intrigued. "You think this is just about keeping up?" He met her gaze, his expression turning serious for a moment. "Maybe, but I think it's more about learning from each other. I might not be as strong as you, but I can learn." There was a flicker of something in Arixith's eyes, something Zane couldn't quite place. It was almost as if she was seeing him for the first time, really seeing him. "You are strange, human," she said after a long pause. "You do not fight like the others, you fight with something else." Zane stood a little straighter, wiping sweat from his brow. "Maybe I just don't like losing." Arixith's lips twitched, the closest thing to a smile Zane had seen from her. "You are frustrating." "I get that a lot," Zane said, grinning again. For a moment they just stood there, the air between them thick with unspoken words. Zane's heart was racing, not from the fight but from something else, something more unexpected. Arixith turned, her expression unreadable once more. "The fight is over. You are strong in your own way, but next time I will not hold back." Zane's grin widened. Wouldn't expect anything less. As Arixith walked away, Zane watched her go, a strange mix of admiration and curiosity bubbling inside him. She was a warrior, yes, but there was more to her than just strength. And Zane was beginning to think that maybe, just maybe, he could help her find it. The following days felt strange to Zane. He was caught in the whirlwind of peace talks and negotiations, but his mind kept drifting back to Arixith. Every time he passed her in the corridors of the Zyke's capital, there was that flicker of tension between them, that unspoken challenge like a spark waiting to ignite. But things weren't simple anymore. He wasn't just intrigued by her strength. There was something deeper, something unspoken, fragile, and in some ways terrifying. Zane found himself wondering if he was in over his head. Arixith wasn't like anyone he had ever met. She was a warrior, tough and cold, but there was a depth to her, a vulnerability she tried hard to hide. Every time she looked at him, it was like she was wrestling with something she didn't fully understand. And Zane, for all his bravado and charm, couldn't help but be drawn to it. He was sitting in the council hall one afternoon, discussing the treaty terms with the Zyke's leaders when he saw her again. She stood guard outside the meeting room, her towering figure almost intimidating in her gleaming blue armor. As always, her posture was perfect, her expression unreadable. Zane's thoughts started to wander. He had to admit he was curious. He wondered how long it would take before they could drop the walls between them and actually have a real conversation. Something more than banter, more than just testing each other's strength. Maybe, just maybe, they could become friends, or even more. His eyes lingered on her for just a moment too long. That's when it happened. Erixeth's sharp eyes locked onto his, and for the briefest second, Zane could have sworn he saw a flicker of something in them. Then, before he could even process it, she turned and walked away, her heavy boots echoing in the hall like the beat of a war drum. Zane blinked. Something about her expression had shifted, like she'd seen something in him that he wasn't ready to face. He rubbed the back of his neck, confused. It felt like they were dancing around something, but he couldn't quite figure out what. The whole situation was complicated. Later that evening, Zane decided to take a walk to clear his mind. The Zyke's capital was beautiful at night. The twin moons hung high in the sky, casting a soft, silver glow over the city. He found himself near the training arena again, where they had fought just days before. The quiet of the night was interrupted only by the distant hum of machinery and the rustle of wind through the alien trees. He was about to turn and leave when he heard a familiar voice. "You are still following me, human." Zane's heart skipped a beat. He turned to see Erixeth standing in the shadows, her figure illuminated by the moonlight. She looked almost ethereal, her blue armor reflecting the soft light as she crossed her arms over her chest. But there was something different about her tonight. She wasn't as rigid as usual. Her golden eyes, usually so guarded, seemed softer, almost uncertain. Zane smiled, trying to keep things light. "Following? Nah, just taking a walk, but if you want me to leave, I'll go." He raised an eyebrow. "Unless you've come to challenge me again." Erixeth didn't respond right away. She took a few steps closer, her eyes scanning him with a quiet intensity. "I didn't ask you to join me in the training arena," she said, her voice low but not unkind. "I did not expect you to be so persistent." Zane let out a soft laugh. "Guess I'm just full of surprises." There was a moment of silence between them, and for the first time, Zane could sense that Erixeth wasn't just challenging him physically. There was something else in her gaze, something deeper. "You smile at me," she said, her voice quieter now as though she were trying to work through a thought. "You laugh, you joke, but I do not understand it. We are at war. Why do you waste time with such things?" Zane's smile faltered slightly. "I don't think smiling is a waste of time. Life's short. We've got to find joy where we can." He took a step toward her, his tone softening. "But I get it. You've spent your life fighting, it's all you know." Erixeth didn't look away. "I have spent my life serving my people. There is no time for joy, no time for softness." Zane felt a pang of sadness. He'd known that, of course. Erixeth was a warrior built to protect and fight, but the way she said it made him realize how much she had sacrificed. It wasn't just about the battles she fought. It was about everything she had given up in the name of duty, everything she had buried inside. "You know," Zane said quietly, "sometimes people need to let go, even for a little while, maybe especially for a little while." Erixeth's golden eyes studied him for a long moment. "And you think I need to let go?" "I think," Zane took a breath, "I think you've been holding onto something for too long, and maybe, just maybe, I can help you find it again." Her eyes flickered with something Zane couldn't quite place, a flash of vulnerability, quickly masked by the usual hard edge. "You are foolish, human." Zane chuckled, not bothered by her words. "Yeah, maybe, but you're not exactly making it easy for me to figure you out, you know." Erixeth was silent for a long time, as though weighing his words. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer than Zane had ever heard it. "I do not know how to be anything but what I am, a warrior." Zane stepped closer, his voice steady. Maybe it's time to figure out who else you could be, without the armor, without the battles. Erixith looked at him, her eyes searching his face, and for a brief moment, Zane thought she might actually say something. But instead she turned away, her shoulders stiffening once more. Perhaps, she said, her tone unreadable, but not today. Zane nodded, understanding. He didn't push. He wasn't sure if he was ready for her to open up to him completely, not yet. But that wasn't the point. What mattered was that she hadn't turned him away, not this time. As she began to walk away, Zane called out to her, "Erixith, if you ever want to talk, you know where to find me." She paused just for a second, then looked back over her shoulder. Her golden eyes were softer now, but still guarded. "I will remember that, human." Zane smiled, his heart light for the first time in days. And as she disappeared into the night, Zane couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, he was starting to break through her walls, one smile at a time. The days passed in a blur of meetings, negotiations, and quiet moments between Zane and Erixith. As the peace talks continued, Zane couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing between them. He noticed the subtle shifts in her behavior, how her gaze lingered on him just a little longer than before, or how she would occasionally offer a faint, almost imperceptible smile when their paths crossed. It was like she was beginning to let her guard down bit by bit. But every time Zane thought they were making progress, Erixith would pull away, as if she was afraid of something. He could feel the emotional wall she kept around herself, solid and unyielding, and it frustrated him. He wasn't sure if she was afraid to let someone in, or if she simply didn't know how to open up. Either way, it was like playing a game where the rules kept changing. One evening, after another long day of talks, Zane found himself walking alone in the Zyk's capital. He wasn't sure where he was going, just that he needed some space to think. The air was cool, the twin moons hanging overhead like silent witnesses to the quiet night. The city was peaceful at this hour, the usual hustle and bustle replaced by a calming stillness. He was so lost in thought that he almost didn't notice her standing in the shadows. "Erixith," he called, his voice soft, unsure if she was even there. From the darkness, Erixith stepped forward, her silhouette cutting a sharp figure against the glowing city lights. Her armor was less intimidating at night, the polished blue surface reflecting the moonlight in a soft, almost ethereal way. "You were looking for me, human." Her voice was calm, but there was something in the air between them, a tension that neither of them could ignore. Zane smiled, trying to keep things light. "I wasn't exactly looking for you, but you always seem to find me, don't you?" Erixith's golden eyes flickered with something. Was it amusement? It was hard to tell with her, but Zane couldn't help but feel a little hope stirring inside him. Maybe, just maybe, she was starting to let down some of those walls. "I suppose," Erixith replied, her voice quieter now. "You seem to be everywhere I go." Zane's smile softened. "Maybe I'm just trying to figure you out." For a long moment there was only the sound of the wind between them, the night air thick with unsaid words. Zane knew this wasn't just about the treaty anymore. It was about something deeper, about breaking through the silence, the armor, the distance that separated them. But was she ready? Or was he just fooling himself? "Why do you keep doing this?" Erixith's voice was suddenly heavy with emotion. It wasn't like her to sound this vulnerable. "Why do you keep smiling, laughing? I am a warrior. I do not know how to be anything else." Zane's heart ached as he took a step closer to her, careful not to invade her space. "You don't have to be anything else, Erixith. You can be both, a warrior and someone more, someone who deserves to feel more than just duty and battle." Her golden eyes met his, searching him for something. "I have never known anything else. My people, my whole life, it's been about strength, about duty, about surviving." Zane's voice softened as if he could feel the weight of her words pressing on him. "I get that, I do, but you don't have to carry that weight alone, you know, not anymore. You're not just a warrior, Erixith. You're someone who deserves to laugh, to feel free. You're allowed to be vulnerable." Erixith's expression faltered, her eyes growing distant as if she were processing what he said. "Vulnerable," she repeated, almost to herself. "Yeah," Zane replied gently. "Vulnerable. It's not a weakness, you know, it's strength in a way. It means you trust someone enough to let them see the real you. The part of you that's not just a soldier, the part that feels." There was a long silence as Erixith seemed to wrestle with his words. Her gaze dropped to the ground for a moment, her fingers twitching at her side, like she was fighting the urge to do something, something he couldn't quite understand. "I do not know how," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Zane took another step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "That's okay. You don't have to figure it out all at once. I'm not asking you to change everything. I just want to be there for you, to show you that there's more to life than just fighting." Erixith's eyes met his again, and this time there was something more there. Something fragile, something he could almost touch. "Why?" she asked, her voice tinged with confusion. "Why would you want to help me? I am nothing like you." Zane smiled softly, a tenderness in his eyes. "Exactly. That's why I want to help. I think you're incredible, Erixith. Not because of your strength, but because of who you are underneath all of it. You're not just a weapon. You're someone I want to get to know." For a long time, Erixith didn't say anything. She just stood there, her posture a little less rigid than usual. Zane could see the war behind her eyes, the conflict between who she was and who she might want to be. Finally, she took a step toward him. It was small, but it meant everything. Her voice, when it came, was quieter than he had ever heard it before. "I do not know how to be what you ask of me, Zane," she said, her eyes never leaving his. "But maybe I will try." Zane's heart soared. "That's all I ask, one step at a time." And in that moment, under the twin moons, with the quiet night around them, Zane knew that this was the beginning of something incredible. Something that neither of them fully understood yet, but that they were both willing to explore. As Erixith looked up at him, her golden eyes now a little softer, Zane smiled, feeling the weight of her words settle in his chest. This was the start of something bigger than either of them, something that would change them both forever. The following days felt different. Zane couldn't quite explain it, but something had shifted between him and Erixith. There was a subtle change in the air whenever they were together, lighter, warmer, like a crack in a wall that allowed a sliver of sunlight to break through. Erixith had started to open up, even if just a little, and Zane found himself drawn to her in a way he hadn't expected. She was still a warrior, still the same fierce, unyielding figure she had always been, but now there was something more to her, something softer, something real. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when Erixith would pull back into her old habits, shutting herself off from the world like a soldier returning to the battlefield. But Zane could see it. He could see the struggle behind her eyes. And every time she looked at him, there was a flicker of something more, something that told him she was trying, even if she didn't fully understand how. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling round of peace talks, Zane found himself walking through the garden of the Zyk's capital, the sound of distant chatter filling the air. It was the perfect escape from the tension that had been building in the conference room. The garden was serene, the alien plants swaying gently in the breeze, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the cold, metallic walls of the city. Zane was lost in thought when a voice broke through the quiet. "You seem far away, human." He turned, his heart skipping at the sight of Erixith standing at the entrance to the garden. She was leaning against a pillar, her golden eyes focused on him with that same intensity she always had, but there was something else in her gaze. Something softer. She was out of her armor today, dressed in a simple tunic that allowed her to move more freely. She looked different, almost vulnerable, and for a brief moment, Zane couldn't look away. "I was just thinking," Zane said, his voice light. "It's hard not to get lost in all this chaos." Erixith stepped forward, her footsteps quiet on the grass. "You humans seem to do a lot of thinking. she remarked, her voice still holding that underlying edge of curiosity. Zane grinned. We like to overthink, especially when we're trying to figure things out. She raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. And what is it that you are trying to figure out? Zane's smile faded slightly as he looked at her. You, mostly, he said honestly. I'm still trying to understand you. Erixith's expression remained unreadable for a moment. Then, she took a step closer, her golden eyes locking with his. And what is it you think you understand so far? Zane took a deep breath, the weight of her gaze pulling him in. I think you've spent your whole life fighting, protecting, being what others need you to be. But I don't think you've ever really stopped to ask yourself who you want to be. Erixith was silent for a long time, her eyes scanning his face as though searching for something. And you think I can just change? I think you don't need to change who you are, Zane replied softly. You're a warrior, Erixith. That's never going to change, but maybe there's more to you than just being a weapon. Maybe there's room for more. She looked away then, her gaze drifting to the horizon. I don't know how to be anything else. I was raised to fight, to protect. I know, Zane said gently, taking a small step toward her. But there's more to life than fighting, more than just survival. There's a whole world out there and you deserve to experience it. You deserve to laugh, to be happy, to be more than just a soldier. Erixith's eyes softened at his words, but she quickly turned her face away, as if she couldn't quite meet his gaze. You speak of things I don't understand, human. Zane reached out, his hand stopping just short of her arm. Then let me help you understand. I'm not asking you to let go of everything you've been. I just want to show you that there's more to you than you think. She looked at him then, her eyes filled with conflict. I do not know how to trust anyone with this, with myself. You don't have to trust me all at once, Zane said, his voice reassuring. Trust is something that grows step by step. We don't have to figure it all out right now. For a moment there was only silence. Then, without warning, Erixith took a deep breath and turned to face him fully. Her golden eyes were no longer filled with the usual walls of defense. Instead, they were open, raw, and vulnerable. I am not sure I am ready for this. Ready for whatever this is between us. Zane smiled gently, his heart swelling in his chest. I'm not asking you to be ready. I'm just asking you to try, one small step at a time. Erixith seemed to think about this for a moment, her brow furrowing slightly. And what if I fail? Zane shook his head, his voice warm with sincerity. You won't fail. There's no such thing as failing when you're just being yourself. She met his gaze then, her eyes searching his face as though she were trying to figure out if he was being truthful. You are strange human. Zane chuckled, his grin widening. I get that a lot. Erixith didn't smile, but there was a softness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Perhaps I will try for you. Zane's heart skipped a beat, and before he could stop himself, he reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch lingered for a moment, and in that quiet, tender moment, the world around them seemed to fade away. Thank you, Zane whispered. Erixith didn't say anything in return, but she didn't pull away either. Instead, she stood there with him, the weight of the silence between them no longer heavy, but comfortable. They didn't have to have all the answers, not yet. But for the first time, Zane felt like they were on the same path, walking toward something they were both ready to discover. The next few days were an unspoken dance of proximity and distance. Zane and Erixith moved through their days like two stars caught in each other's orbit. They weren't quite close enough to touch, but neither was there any denying the pull between them. It was a delicate balance, one where the line between friendship and something more began to blur, but neither of them was ready to cross it fully. At least, not yet. Zane noticed the changes in Erixith, even if she didn't admit to them. She smiled more often, just a tiny twitch at the corner of her lips when they exchanged a glance. She had started to soften, just a little, especially during their brief moments together. But there were still times when the walls she had built so high came crashing down, and she would retreat into herself, a warrior once more, hiding behind the armor of duty. It frustrated him, but it also intrigued him. He wasn't sure what he was hoping for, maybe for her to let go of everything that held her back, or maybe just to see a glimpse of the woman beneath the warrior. All he knew for sure was that he wasn't ready to give up on her. Not yet. One afternoon, after another round of tense negotiations, Zane found himself wandering the city again, his thoughts racing. His feet carried him to the training grounds, though he hadn't planned on going there. It was quiet now, the echoes of battle long gone. The arena stood tall and empty, a silent witness to the countless warriors who had fought there. Zane stopped at the entrance, looking out across the expanse. "Arixith," he called softly, though he wasn't sure she would hear him. The answer came almost immediately. "Human," she said, her voice low and steady, but there was something more in it today. A curiosity, maybe. "You seek something." Zane turned to see her standing in the doorway, her armor gleaming under the dim light of the afternoon. She was different today, more relaxed, less rigid. The small changes were adding up. He could see it in the way she carried herself, in the way her eyes softened when she looked at him. "Maybe I'm just looking for a little company," Zane said with a grin, stepping toward her. "I get tired of being stuck in all those boring talks. How about we spar? Give me a chance to prove I've learned a few things since last time." Arixith's gaze flickered, a hint of surprise crossing her face. Then she narrowed her eyes with that same fierce intensity he had come to expect from her. "You think you are ready for another round?" Zane smirked. "I think I'm always ready. Besides, I could use the distraction." She regarded him for a moment longer before stepping aside, motioning toward the center of the arena. "Very well. Let us see if you have improved." Zane stepped into the arena, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline as he squared off against her. He was no warrior, but he had picked up enough from their last sparring match to know what to expect. He had learned how to anticipate her strikes, how to dodge her powerful blows. They began, the clash of their movements echoing through the arena. Zane ducked under her first swing, grinning as he sidestepped. "Not bad, huh?" Arixith's lips curled slightly. "You have improved." The fight continued, fast and fluid, with each of them pushing the other to their limits. Zane couldn't help but admire her, the strength in her every move, the way she fought with such purpose and precision. She was everything a warrior should be. But there was something else there, too. Something he had caught glimpses of when her guard was down. A tenderness, a vulnerability she was desperately trying to keep hidden. As they paused for a moment, both catching their breath, Zane took the opportunity to speak again. "You know," he said, wiping sweat from his brow, "you don't always have to fight so hard. You can take a break, just be. You deserve that." Arixith's eyes narrowed, the intensity in her gaze returning. "I do not know how to just be." Zane smiled softly. "Then let me teach you. I'm not in a rush. We can take it one step at a time together." For a moment, Arixith didn't respond. Instead, she looked at him, really looked at him, as if weighing his words. There was hesitation in her expression, a fear of something she couldn't name. But Zane could see the conflict in her eyes, and he knew she was fighting something deep inside. Finally, Arixith sighed, stepping back and lowering her stance. "I am tired, human," she said, her voice softer now, almost vulnerable. "Tired of always fighting, of always being strong. But I do not know how to stop." Zane's heart twisted at her words. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "You don't have to stop being strong. You've been strong for so long, and that's a part of you that will never change. But there's more to you, Arixith. You don't have to be just a warrior. You can be. You, whoever that is, whoever you want to be." Her eyes softened, a small flicker of hope shining through the walls she had built. "I don't know if I can be that person, but maybe I can try." Zane's heart raced, the words he had been waiting to hear finally spoken. "I'm not asking you to be anyone else, just to be yourself. I'm here for you, every step of the way." Erixith stood still for a moment, her gaze drifting to the ground. Zane could see the battle within her, the tug-of-war between her duty and the possibility of something more. She was still afraid, still uncertain, but there was a lightness in her eyes now that hadn't been there before. Finally she nodded just once. "I will try, Zane, for you." Zane smiled, feeling his chest tighten with something he couldn't quite name. "That's all I can ask for." And in that quiet moment, with the sound of the wind whispering through the arena, they both knew they were standing at the crossroads, between the past and the future, between the warrior and the woman who had yet to fully embrace herself. It wasn't going to be easy, but Zane was willing to walk beside her every step of the way. And somehow he knew that together they would figure it out. The days that followed felt different. The tension that had once simmered between them had melted away, replaced by something warmer, gentler. Zane and Erixith no longer danced around each other but moved together with quiet understanding. There were no grand declarations, no need for words. The bond between them had deepened in ways neither fully understood but both felt. The peace treaty was signed that week, and the Zykes had agreed to a tentative truce with humanity. But Zane knew that wasn't the victory he'd been fighting for. The real triumph was what he had found with Erixith, the trust they had begun to build, the moments of vulnerability they had shared. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the capital, Zane found Erixith standing at the edge of the city, gazing out over the horizon. He joined her without a word, his hand finding hers. She looked at him, her eyes soft, her once stern demeanor gone. "You've changed me, human," she whispered, her voice carrying a weight of emotion she hadn't known how to express. Zane smiled, his heart full. "And you've changed me, Erixith." Together they faced the future, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side. And that was all they needed.